So I'm going to tell you a story now. I'll try to keep it short, but it's gonna, you know. So anyway, years ago, me and a buddy of mine, I'll leave some people's identities and names out of this. We used to go hunting up at the Green Swamp, like northeast of Zephyr Hills. It's a popular hunting grounds for hog and deer and everything here in Florida. And anyway, we were there, and it's really neat up there. But I met an Indian. But ironically, he wasn't from Florida. He wasn't a Seminole. He was from like Missouri. But he was telling me stories about Sasquatch or Bigfoot, bigsquatch I call them, bigsquatch, down by the Withalacochee River in the Green Swamp. And he told me that a bigsquatch, some guy that lived near the Withalacochee River had prize chickens, you know, like they take the shows and stuff like that, whatever, you know, and that the bigsquatch broke into the chicken coops, and I guess he tore them up or stole them. I think he just tore it up, though. I think the guy said that nothing was eaten or whatever. It was just torn up or something. But so apparently the homeowner, the guy, the chicken owner, ran out there with I think it was a shotgun. It might have been a 30-06. I can't remember, but I guess he said he told the Indian guy that he had blasted this thing a couple times, like in the chest, maybe the shoulder, but it didn't seem to do anything or something. I can't remember about that. But anyway, so long story long, it ran back off into the swamp. So, you know, whatever. So, years later, you know, we used to go in there and hunt and stuff like that. And, you know, there are a lot of good old boys go in there, rednecks, just everybody, you know. You can go bike trailing and four-wheeling and driving there in your mud truck, I guess, whatever you want to do. And I think it's about 400,000 acres. I can't really remember exactly, but and there's grates. They call them grates all through it, of mud roads, dirt roads. Well, anyway, years later after that, I got tired of the monotonous life and whatever, and I said, you know, I'm just gonna go camp and hang out up in Green Swamp, you know. And I had a little bit of savings, you know, but I was just gonna pretty much try to live off the land somehow. Well, I got out there, like now it's November, and it was raining. It was one of those cold Novembers. I mean, it was miserable. It was hideous. It was absolutely hideous. And I was wet. I got wet somehow, and I was sleeping. Because you're not supposed to, like, live in there. So I was so I'm living in there. And I had, like, a little brush shelter, and, you know, I would kind of come and go. Anyway, I'm in there one night, and you got to keep an eye out for the park rangers. But they're not very bright anyway. They don't know what's going on. So there's all kinds of stories in there about, I guess there was drug drops in there, and there was one time, I think it was a parachute or something, and there was like a skeleton, a guy just hanging in an oak tree in a parachute. I guess no one ever saw him. He was hanging in there for years, I guess. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what someone told me. Anyway, long story long, I'm walking through some thick, you know, some brush down like a hog trail, and I hear something. And it's kind of you know, not following me, but pacing me. Kind of, and I could barely hear it. It wasn't very loud. And then I kind of chilled out and I sat down on a stump, made sure there was no rattlesnakes or water moccasins under it. And then I just had this feeling something was behind me. So I slowly stood up and I turned around, and there it was. There he was. I call him Bigsquatch. And I called him that for 2 years. This dude, it was a Bigfoot, what most people try to call whatever, but very human looking. Had the long arms, but this dude, 8 foot tall at least. I'm only about, I don't know, 5, 10, or 11, and I was looking up like that, and I was thinking, I had a knife, but I was thinking, I'm not going to fight this thing. What am I going to do? And then I can't shoot it because then everyone's going to hear it, because you're not allowed to hunt in there after dark or in the evening. They close the park. So I just do this, like in the old movies, I just go, how? I didn't know what to do. What do you do when you see a big ass, I call him Bigsquatch. And he looked, and he went, did something like that, and then he just went, and I didn't know if that meant to leave or what, but, so, I just sort of backed away, slowly, and I started just walking back down the trail. I was just like, well, I'm not going anywhere. I live here now too, so. And I get a little ways, and I don't hear anything, and then I hear it, he's trailing me again. Now it's maybe more. Could be 2, 3. Very stealthy, very stealthy. And when you try to look through the brush, it's almost like they're camouflaged, or at some points invisible, almost invisible. And I was like, that's weird. That dude was huge. That thing was huge, and he's almost invisible to me. So anyway, I get out there, and finally I stop, and I turn around, and I do that again. I go, how? Because what do? And they all stepped out, and I thought, uh-oh, they're gonna attack me or kill me, or I don't know what. So they just go like this, and they go, and they do like a little thing. They talk to each other. Anyway, so I start following them. I was like, well, I'll just follow them. They're following me. I'll follow them. And I followed them, and they didn't care. They didn't even care. I was all scruffy. I had like a big, I looked like one of them almost. I had that, like, I won't say what year, but I had like real blonde hair, and it was long. I had the mullet, and I had like a big beard, I looked kind of, I looked like a little blonde Sasquatch. But anyway, so I follow them, and we get to we go through this, I don't want to call it a clearing. It was thick, but you could get through it. And you couldn't hear or see anything. And then all of a sudden we went through, and it was a whole, tribe? Not big, but I don't want to go into detail, but there were several of them, and there was littler ones. I guess they were the adolescents or kids or whatever. Some people talk about that, and they were still a little bigger than I was. a lot thicker. Like they were, because I was a little bit better shape back then, but you know, they had the same, their arms seemed longer because I guess they have to grow into them. They were hanging down below their knees a little bit, but these are humans. This is like a Native American tribe, clan, if you will, or a group of indigenous people, whatever, you know. So anyway, I hung out, and then I guess they had been hunting that night, and there was some deer thrown up in a tree, and the bigsquatch, I call him bigsquatch, to separate him from Bigfoot, or say he was the bigsquatch, the 8-footer or more. He goes over to the deer, and his hands, I mean, this dude could have held like 5 basketballs in his hands, you know, I'm exaggerating, but it was crazy. And they have claws, so he ripped open the deer and reached it, and I was like, oh, well, okay, what's he, and then I could tell what he's reaching for, you know, and he pulls out the liver. And I'm like, okay. And I guess, you know, he must have thought I was hungry. I looked a little scraggly, you know, but they look, and you know, people say they stink and all this stuff and call them skunk apes and all that. Well, they do have an odor, but I'll tell you why here in a little bit. Anyway, so he rips this liver out, and he walks over to me. I'm sitting on like a log now, like by some cypress knees. And we're a ways away from the Withalacochee River there. I don't want to say exactly where everything is. But anyway, he just grabs that thing and he bites into it. And he takes like half of it. Maybe probably about 3/4 of it. And then he reaches this, he had like, you know, this hand, and it's scary a little bit. He reaches it out to me and hands me the rest. And he goes, ugh. I'm like, okay, all right. You know, I'm not squeamish, so I was like, all right, whatever, dude. I don't really like to eat raw stuff. You know, I know some hunters, you know, they go out, they'll eat the eyeball of a deer, or, you know what I mean. You know what I mean? And then some people, they say armadillos, that they get leprosy, or what, I don't know. But, so anyway, I was like, well, you know, I'll play along here. You know, he did it. He's not dead or nothing, so whatever. You know, it's a liver. So I bite into it, and it's a little chewy. It's a little chewy. And bloody, of course. Anyway, so... that's Miss I don't give. And so I'm chewing, I'm eating it, and he's like, yeah, you know, like, good, huh? You know. Now I one thing I did always have acquire. I always have my Skull long cut wintergreen dip. I have my knife. I had my little, you know, camp fire starter, which I hardly used because I didn't want to be found out. And the Bigfoot, they don't use fire. They don't camp. They don't make like a fire and cook their food and sit around, and even in the winter. And it was cold. It was rainy, you know. But they do make these nice shelters. I called them like the bigsquatch condos. You know, you've probably seen videos. There's that where they bend over stuff and they make nests. Well, so I hung out with them. I lived with them for like 2 years. I learned all their secrets, all the myths and things people talk about that aren't even true. Some are true. Some are true. And anyway, turns out I'll get into one of them. I won't reveal everything because I promised them. lot of people think when they bend over trees and lay them out that it's a warning, or it's a I forget what they call it, directions, you know, for them to go or whatever, which is a little bit true. But what it's telling you is there are portals in the woods, even in the Everglades, and I'm sure all over the country, where all these Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yetis live. That's why they're able to just sort of poof and kind of, they'll be going, and then all of a sudden it seems like they disappear. You know, they can build those. It's almost like an antimatter device they build out of the woods. And certain areas have energy ley lines. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but anyway, I don't want to get too deep into that. We're not trying to do quantum physics here and physics and all this. But another thing that's fascinating about them is they have their hair. And I'm sure there's probably reports of different things, but especially at night, they have shorter, shaggy hair, longer hairs, less on their face, you know, their hands and feet, sometimes their elbows from crawling in the woods, hunting. It is, some of the follicles are hollow. I compare them now to almost like fiber optics or something like this, and they're almost give off sort of an electrical charge, if you will, like static electricity, but without the, you know, the whole whoop-de-doo. And they are able to sense and feel and see things that we can't. And that was a big problem with me, because I can't see good in the dark. Even when I was younger, I just can't. They could see everything. That's why they're always sneaking up on people, because they can see in the dark. Some people say they have sort of like an infrared vision, or they could sense electrical signals. But after living with them for 2 years, I'll tell you, they could see. And they used to get irritated with me because we'd like go hunting, and I'd be way behind because I'd have to listen and try to find them and look for them, because I just couldn't keep up with them. I never could keep up with them. I'll admit that. You know, I'm not, you know, Crocodile Dundee or nothing. And so I know I'm going a little bit all over here a little bit, but anyway, in this little group, I call them a group, tribe, clan, whatever, there was like the medicine man. This dude was scary as hell. And he looked like them, but he was even freaky. He was freaky. Because this dude, it was almost like he could take on several forms of different animals, like one after the other, and he was a bit freaky. And like, for instance, one time I was just chilling out, you know, laying in like my little nest. We all slept in like these nests made of all kinds of, you know, branches, pine needles, all this, and we would even weave vines and stuff together with different, you know, leaves and stuff them, especially in the wintertime, but and make like a pillow. And it was comfortable, you know. I mean, if you're gonna, you know, now they had the hair, so I was cold at times, but you know, you kind of burrow yourself into the nest and kind of almost like a blanket almost. Well, anyway, I was laying in that one night, and it was a full moon, and I saw some owls fluttering. You know, they'd flutter from a tree, maybe catch a mouse, whatever they were doing. And I'm watching them because I can't sleep. I think I was dipping. I was sitting there with a dip in, and I was just sitting there watching. Oh, and it was cold, not freezing, but and it, thank God it was no rain that night. But all of a sudden, this like 6-foot owl, I guess you call it an owl, man. This thing flies over my head. I could feel the wings, woof, you know, like woof. And I think, oh, well, it's one of the owls. They think I'm a rat or something. They're going to scratch me, you know. And I look, he flies over from the back, and he turns his head and looks at me. And it's that medicine man. And then he just disappeared in the air. I was like, what, bro? Like, so the next morning, so they get up early. We would get up early because they used to like to go watch the campers and the hunters and mess with them and stuff, you know. But so we pretty much stayed clear of them. And you know, I didn't want no one to see me because I was starting to look like a blonde-haired big Sasquatch, but a literal one. But so the next, like I said, I was trying to communicate with Big Squatch, the 8-footer, and I was like, hey, and I was pointing at the shaman, the medicine man's area, and I was like, hey, I want to know how y'all do this, because we would go places throughout the swamp, and we were able to go from one spot to another real quick without like really walking. Like it wasn't time travel, but it was like portals through the woods. They knew where they were at. And like for instance, one time people almost saw us, and even the 8-foot guy, he just, you know how they hide behind trees or stick their head out like this and look? They went inside of the tree, like the big cypress tree with the, you know, they got the cypress knees around it. They just melded into it. And so I learned a lot of their tricks. I learned a lot of their techniques for this stuff. And it has a lot to do with, and their smell. Their smell, the reason they smell, of course, they don't, you know, use deodorant and shower like we do, but that smell and the natural herbs and roots, you know, because we would eat like the palmetto roots and any kind of like berries we could find, or moss, the hanging moss. We used to nibble on that, you know.